Good morning, friends. It's Josh here. Welcome to another morning meditation and another beautiful, wet, and rainy day. We're going to be looking at the parable of the workers in the vineyard today in Matthew 20. And I want you to contemplate if this topic directly affects you, if it describes you or it describes someone you know as we go through it. So starting in verse 1, it says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. After he agreed with the workers to pay them a denarii, he sent them into the vineyard. Then he went out around 9 in the morning and saw others standing around the marketplace doing nothing. He said to them, 'You also go into the vineyard, and I'll pay you whatever is right.' And they went. Again around noon, and then at 3 in the afternoon, he did the same thing. Around 5 in the afternoon, he went and found others standing around, and he said to them, 'Why are you just standing around here doing nothing all day long?' 'Because nobody had hired us,' they replied. He responded, 'You also go into the vineyard.' When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, 'Call the workers and give them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and moving on finally to the first.' When those who were hired at 5 in the afternoon came, each one received a denarii. Now, when those hired first came, they thought that they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarii. When they received it, they grumbled against the landowner. 'These who were hired last worked only 1 hour, and they received the same pay as we did, even though we had worked the whole day in the hot sun.' But he replied to one of them, 'Friend, I did you no wrong. Didn't I agree to pay you a denarii? Take what belongs to you and go. I want to give to this one who was hired last the same thing that I gave to you. Don't I have the right to do that? Don't I have the right to do what I want with my belongings? Or are you resentful because I am generous?' So those who are last will be first, and those who are first will be last." And naturally, this is talking about God's love for humanity and how he loves all of us equally, right? Whether we are Christians our entire lives, or we're Christians in the final moments of our lives. It's God's grace that is continually being extended to us. It's called prevenient grace. And our accepting of that grace that makes us justified. But I want to focus on the man here, the worker, who grumbles when he receives his pay. One, because transparently I've been doing some inner grumbling over the last couple days. And I noticed it yesterday. I was watching the news, and I was watching a segment on this rise in domestic violence that was happening across the country, which I think is kind of a no-brainer. I mean, you get people who are angry and have broken relationships and things, and then you don't give them an outlet to be able to get space. And so they're confined and there's more violence and things. But I thought about that. I thought about, actions, thinking leads to doing. And, we grumble inside, like the man who's grumbling because the guy who only worked an hour got paid the same thing he did, and he worked all day in the hot sun. So he grumbles. And the thing about grumbling is it's obviously a dissatisfaction. But it's sort of this almost passive-aggressive, you got this thing inside of you, but you're not really brave enough to say it out loud, or you don't have the words to say it out loud, so you grumble about it inside, somewhat audibly, and that's maybe antagonistic in a way, right? Sarcasm, kind of these like little jabs and things at people, all because you're upset. And the thing about grumbling is if you don't do something about the reason for the grumbling, is that can grow into some pretty substantial anger, which if left unchecked and depending on, how you are as a person, could lead to some violence. And domestic violence is a very real thing. And I grew up, in many circumstances where there was a lot of domestic violence going on. As a young child, I would see some stuff, and it just wasn't great. It's not pleasant. And I know that domestic violence exists in everywhere. It's everywhere, and I'm not naive to think that it does not exist in some of the households of our brothers and sisters who are part of the Wesleyan Chapel family. And so I just want to share with you a quote by Thomas Merton, who was a beautiful human being. He lives on in his writings and his contemplative thoughts, but he writes this under the section Love in Action. He says, "To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone and everything is to succumb to violence. More than that, it is cooperation in violence. The frenzy of the activist neutralizes his work for peace. It destroys his own inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of his work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful." So I leave you with the sentiment this morning to maybe do an inner inventory of anything that has been making you grumble lately, and maybe be keenly aware of how the grumbling can lead to more destructive angers in your life if you don't pause for a moment and reflect and accept them and determine if you can do anything about them. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.